Welcome to your first peek in InDesign. I am really proud to say that most students who begin to use InDesign switch over from using things like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint and begin to do most of their graphics and even Word documents using InDesign. I'm going to start off with a quick overview of what InDesign is and how we'll be using it for our class. And I have a little example here that I'm going to walk through before we even get started and use the program. InDesign is really similar to using something like Microsoft Word, but it has the power and graphic capability of many Adobe Creative Suite programs, and that includes Photoshop. So in a really quick overview, nutshell, Photoshop should be where you do all of your graphic work, like things like this, your images, and then InDesign should be where you come and do the layout. Layouts include things like a book layout like this. It could be a single-sided document, it could be a double-sided document, it could be a large board, it could be a small poster, cards, envelopes, you name it. You have the capability to lay all those different things out. One of the most powerful tools in InDesign is that it allows you to do what's called a book format. So if you look here, sorry, I'm bouncing around quite a bit, this would be considered the cover. So if you're holding a book right now and you turn the page, this page right here would essentially be the back side of your cover. And this would be the first page of the document. Now if you turn this, this is on the back side. So it's really powerful because many of you will need to create a portfolio. A portfolio could be for you to get into a different school in the future, whether it be going on to a university or another institution. Some of you are required to make a portfolio before you leave our program. But either way, it's really common in our industries to be able to create a portfolio. And most portfolios are an open book layout like this that takes up both sides. So having the capability of looking at your graphics and images together as if it were laid out in a booklet or a binder is really helpful. One of the main concepts that we'll be going over, which might be new to you, is something called frames. So InDesign uses something called frames to insert essentially all of the images that you want to put in, anything to create your graphics, as well as any text editing. So frames will be a really important concept. We will also be reviewing things that you might already know how to do in Microsoft Word, so a lot of text editing and things like that. I'll also show you guys how to export your documents. We'll mostly be working with PDFs or converting into PDFs, but you can also convert images as well. So what I'm going to do is essentially create a comprehensive guide following this little intro where we go through everything step by step, and you can utilize the chapters feature, which I'll also share with you, on how you can skip around or review a specific part without having to watch 10 videos. So let's go ahead and get started now that we've covered this intro. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Welcome to InDesign, your new favorite program. Well, you don't have to pick a favorite, but I hope that it's at least a close tie with Photoshop and maybe even Revit. Quick intro. If you guys take a look, I use InDesign quite a bit. I use it professionally and personally. Here are all of my Revit syllabi that I've created, as well as schedules, graduation cards. I even use it to do some laser cutting. We'll get into that maybe one day. Business billing, labels that I created, address labels for my kids. These are chore charts. I also do graphic design work on the side. I mean, this isn't something that I set up for you guys just to be like, oh, look at how much I use it. But I mean, if you look, last month, 2 months, 2 months, Obviously, I'm not working quite as much as I used to with the pandemic going on, but I use InDesign all the time. Oh, look, here's even our website. I even used InDesign to do our Canvas website graphics. And then just, I love writing letters to my friends, but what I'll do is I will like collage it or write it up in InDesign and then cut it up. So there's just some fun stuff I made for a friend. I digress. What we're going to be doing is going over InDesign from very start to finish. So many of you have never opened it before, so I have reset my system so that my screen should look like yours. And a lot of this will feel really similar to what we did when we first started working with Photoshop. So let's go ahead and get started on going through InDesign. So if we take a look here, again, you probably won't have any recent files, but as it becomes your favorite, you're going to have even more than I do. And we don't have anything to open because we haven't worked on anything yet. So let's go ahead and click on Create New to get us in the program. And from here, this will be one of the things that probably might look, familiar to you because you have already done things similar in Photoshop. Now, we haven't done this for a long time because typically in Photoshop, I give you files that you are opening and working on existing stuff, but we did go through how to open up new documents at the beginning of our semester. So from here, again, I have a lot of recents. You can see I'm on the Recent tab right here, but we've also got Print, Web, and Mobile. Now we're going to be sticking to print, even though we will take our print work and put it online. And I do have some templates. Let me say that this is it's less than a year that we've had Creative Cloud for free for our students, and there's been a couple hiccups, and one of the hiccups is that I don't think the free version comes with these templates here. So I don't think that you guys will see this. If you do happen to see templates, please just drop me a note and let me know. I like to pay for the full version just so, you know, it never goes away. I've always had Creative Cloud. To me, it's as essential as, you know, some people getting coffee every week. So for me, I can totally justify the cost of paying for the subscription. But when you go to print, you can see that if you hit the plus sign, there's more presets here for you. So we've got 11 by 17. This is called the tabloid wide. We've got 7 by 5. So you do have sizes here to pick from that are preset. But as usual, you can go over here and rename a new document. Like I can call this intro. And you can change up the sizes quite a bit. So if you are working in some sort of like let's just call it like a chapbook format, something that's like a square format, you know, you can do a 6 by 6. Okay, you can just type that in right there. By default, your units should be inches, but if they're not, you can change them right here, and I'll show you how to change the default. Again, this typically it's in picas because we are working with software that typically graphic designers use, and those are the units they use. But again, I will show you how to change those in your system settings. Your orientation, you know, if it's a square, it doesn't matter. But whether you want it portrait or landscape, you can just click on one of these icons. When you watch the intro video, I talked about it being a book layout, and that's referred to as facing pages. So I'm going to keep it on for now so you can see how it works. And then with all of these things, I'm going to show you how to change these after the fact. I think that that's important because, you know, we see it all here when we first open it, but there isn't one place that we can go to after the fact to change it. So if there's one thing that I could send to the InDesign team, it would be, how can we just pull up this menu after we've already opened up a document? And then we've got margins here as well. If the chain is on, now the chain is off because it's broken, it means that if you change one, it will change all of them. So if you want your margins to be 1 inch all around, keep the chain on. But if you want like one of them, like maybe let's say the top one to be a 1/2 inch, then go ahead and break the chain so that you can make one of them unique. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with the 6 by 6. Again, the orientation doesn't matter, and I'll keep it facing pages with some unique margins. So go ahead and hit create, and this is what it looks like. Okay, kind of silly, but this is what our screen also looks like. Now, the only reason why I open this is for us to start our navigation, and then I'm going to close this, and then we're going to open up another document. I just wanted you to see how to open up a document. So from here, what we're going to do is just like what we did with Photoshop, I always like these icons to be collapsed. So now we can see our pages and our properties. These are the two things that we are going to be using the absolute most. And Creative Cloud libraries, you know, if you don't want it, again, we can pull it to the right and then close it. If you are using Creative Cloud, you might see some of your work here, like you can see some of mine. I work for Awaken Studios as well as Core Power Yoga, so you'll see lots of that. Fortunately, I work so much I don't even get to take advantage of the free memberships I get because I'm having too much fun teaching you guys how to do the same stuff. So the main part right now is just to collapse everything so that, again, you have more real estate on your screen, and you can just kind of click back and forth between these two screens. Now, in your Pages menu, it's really important to find this white line that separates where it says Master from Page 1. So I'm going to take this and pull this down at least halfway so that there's a good distance between these two. When people first start working in InDesign, it's really easy to get these two menus mixed up. I'll get into that in a later lecture. Oh no, I'm having an update in the middle of our lecture. Go away. Okay, I'm back. Phew, at least it wasn't like a system shutdown. But that's really all you need to get started in InDesign. And then if there's ever windows that we need in the future, or if you lose, you know, like your properties or anything like that, you can open them back up here. Now, in the past, if you've used InDesign, you may have opened or needed to open a lot more of these menus, but honestly, now almost everything is in the Properties menu, so I just keep it down to these two. Really simple and light. And that's it to get us going, so I'm going to go ahead and close this, again, just like Photoshop, and we're going to open up a new document. And while we're opening up a new document and doing this intro, it will set up our first assignment, which will be your portfolio. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. It's your exercise and your assignment in one. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this document. There wasn't much to save, but it did save it for me. And now we're going to go ahead and start the second part. So again, this is our lecture exercise assignment. And we are going to be learning all of the basics of InDesign through this lecture, as well as setting up your portfolio that you will turn in as part of your final. So I'm going to go back to Create New, and when I open up this new document, we're actually going to keep this really simple. We're going to do the default 8.5 by 11. And the reason why we're keeping this one really simple is that many institutions, including the University of Utah, if you apply to one of their design programs, they actually just want an 8.5 by 11. They don't want anything fancy, and they want everything to be standard. So I've got 8.5 by 11. I'm keeping facing pages on because we are doing portfolio style. I'm going to keep the margins at 1/2 inch for now, but I will show you how to change those once we get into the document. And then again, I'm in inches. Before I go too far, I'm actually going to show you guys how to change the system standard. So I'm actually going to close this. And it's important to do this when you're not in a document because what this allows you to do is change it for the entire system, not just the one document. And what you'll want to do is find your preferences. So on a Mac, you go up to InDesign Preferences and then Units and Increments. But on a PC, you will go to File and then go all the way down to the very bottom, and it should say Preferences. So this will be a little bit different on your screen if you're using a PC. So from our Units and Increments, just make sure you're only changing two things. So under ruler units, please change your horizontal and vertical to be inches. They might be picas right now. And again, if you change it here without any documents open, you never have to change it again. So that should have been the first thing that you do when you open up InDesign. All right, and now I'm going to go back to create new. So this is our third round of seeing this, so this should be really familiar, in addition to all of the Photoshop experience that you've had. And again, if you don't see a recent here that you want to see, go ahead and click on print. Letter is right here. Everything looks good. Let me check my margins. 1/2 inch, that looks great. Orientation is also right. I do want it landscape. And then I'll go ahead and click on create. So here is my document that I'm working with. Let me give you a little bit of background of what you're looking at. On your screen, you see a small thumbnail preview of your work. So this is really similar to our layer menu, but in this case, instead of layers, we're going to see all of the pages. And I think here, let me look under panel options, you can make your thumbnails larger. So this is, again, really similar to Photoshop. Let me see what jumbo looks like. Okay, that's not very jumbo, but it still is bigger. So again, that's a right click, panel options, and you can change your page sizes as well. And under masters, up here, you can also make them jumbo so that they're both a larger size, okay? And again, that'll just give you a little preview of what's on the page as you're scrolling through, if that helps you. So this is the page that we'll be working on, and you can see that there's already a pink and a purple line on here. Now, while you're here, by default, you should be in the V or Move menu. So this is similar to Photoshop as well. By default, we always want to be here. Now, let me just make sure that it's what it's called. Yes, the selection tool. And the reason why it is called V is because one of the programs, it used to be called Move, and then they wanted to keep it move across the board, but then to be more specific, they changed it to selection. So that's where that's coming in. So with this, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and hit W for me and tell me what happens to your screen, or just think about it, say it out loud. So what W does is it changes from what is work mode, which is this, to a print preview mode. So this, go ahead, when you hit W, it hides all of the print preview elements, and these are your margins. This tells you where you can't go outside of your margins. But one thing to keep in mind is that the margins in InDesign aren't like Microsoft Word. You can absolutely work out of the margins or outside of the margins, and the only time that it will give you a warning is when you go to print. So these are just a graphic reference for you to stay within the margin. But again, other than that, it's not going to give you any sort of warning. If you want to change your margins after the fact, what you'll need to do is go up to Layout at the top of your menu and find Margins and Columns. So again, Layout, Margins and Columns. And from here, you can see a different menu. This is really different from how we first started. And again, you can unlock so that you can make all of them unique. And I'm going to make the bottom 1 inch. And the reason why I'm making the bottom taller is because I want room to put in my page number. And actually 1 inch is too tall, so I'm going to do 0.75. or 3/4 of an inch. And you can see I have preview on, okay? So I'm just going to bump that up a little bit, and you can come here, and if you want to go ahead and make them all consistent again, hit lock and it'll change them all back to 1/2 inch. But again, if you want to change your margins after the fact, it's layout, margins, and columns. So let's go ahead and keep them all at 1/2 inch for now. When you work on your client portfolio, you will make room for your page numbers there. For this class portfolio, you don't need it just yet, but you can make them unique if you'd like. Now, one thing that's different, actually, let me go back to margins and columns. In most programs, if you are adjusting the margins and columns, this is also where you change the document size, but that isn't the case in InDesign. So let's say that you want to change the document size, or maybe you can't necessarily see the rulers well and you just want to quickly see, wait, how big did I make this? That's a little bit different. That is under File, Document Setup. So again, File, Document Setup, and that pulls up our page sizes. Oh my goodness, hallelujah, look at this. They have finally put the margins and all of this stuff in the document setup. So this 2020 version is also new to me, and while I'm recording we will find little gems like this. So I'm actually so happy. You can do everything in one place now. I don't have to have you running around. So let's just say that from here on out, if you go to File, Document Setup, you can also turn facing pages on and off. If I turn on preview here, you can see that it goes to a single page versus a double page because it's waiting for these 2 pages down here. So good. I'm glad that everything is in the same place. So again, size, margins, as well as orientation can be changed in here. You saw that I just swapped the orientation. Then once you get it where you want it, turning facing pages back on, everything looks good here, I can go ahead and click OK, and I'm good to go. So that's a lot just to kind of get like the very basic page setup, right? I'm pretty sure that you guys know how to add pages from here because this isn't going to be a single page document. And the reason why I'm pretty sure that you know how is because it's almost exactly like adding layers in Photoshop. So building on that knowledge, if we hit this plus sign, you can see it says create new page. It might be cut off, sorry if it is. You can click and it adds a whole bunch of pages, or you can right click, again similar to Photoshop. And if you're adding a lot of pages, you can go directly to Insert Pages. And again, this is if you want to prevent from clicking a whole bunch. But I love this menu because you can specifically say how many pages and also exactly where it goes. Like insert it at the start of the document, at the end. You can do it after a specific page, before a specific page. So, maybe you are working on your portfolio and you completely forget to put in a project, but you don't want to put it at the beginning or the end. You want to put it somewhere in the middle. This is where the Insert Pages menu is really helpful. And again, that's a right click, Insert Pages, or we've got this plus sign right here. So quick preview of everything. And you'll also notice that the page that's highlighted in blue is the page or the layout that you're on. So sometimes it can get a little bit confusing, especially when there's a whole bunch of blank pages. So you can quickly see here that I'm on page 5, or I can double click here and go back to page 1. So you can use any one of these things to navigate, and it's a double click. So if I just click on it, it highlights it, but I need to double click on it so that the page numbers get highlighted in blue. So again, a click just selects it, but you can see that the page numbers that are in blue are the ones that are selected. So a double click is what you're looking for here. Okay, so that's your basic page setup. We went over margins, the layout, the size, and what we're going to get into next is something called creating guides. And this is a really quick way to help you guys create like kind of a grid to put all of your stuff together. So we're just going to go ahead and keep plowing through. So in just a minute, we're going to go ahead and start creating guides. Now we are going to be using guides to use as a quick reference on how to insert many images somewhat symmetrically. So I'm going to show you guys what this document looks like right here. So since this is the first time that you are using InDesign, let me actually add a couple blank pages here. Again, this is the example, but this is what a blank page looks like. And guides are these light blue or cyan lines right here. Okay, so they're non-printing. So if I hit W, if I get out of work mode and go into print mode, you see these go away. And I can build my frames within those guides, or I can ignore them, right? But it's a great way for me to kind of set up a system so that I can easily get margins that are the same, you know, between the guides. And lay out my pages before we start putting frames down. Now, once the guides are there, you can ignore them. You can go ahead and, you know, keep them in place. It's really up to you. So here, to start with creating guides, what you can do is go up to Layout at the top menu and go down to Create Guides. So two things I want you to notice first. If you have guides already, which you probably don't, but in the example I just showed you, I did. So if you're redoing guides, make sure to click on Remove Existing Ruler Guides or it will be a mess. You don't know what your new ones are or your old ones. Another rule that's really important is the majority of the time you want to fit the guides to the margins and not your page. Also, please keep preview on so you can kind of see a preview of how it looks as you're working. So for example, if I add 2 rows, you can see that it has split my layout into 1 row, 2 rows, and the gutter is the space between. I previously just referred to it as a margin. I'm sorry, it's a gutter, it's the space between. And you can decide if you want to have like a 1/2 inch between your frames or your images, your text, whatever you plan on separating. And you can also start adding columns as well. And I like to keep my spacing consistent, right? So you can kind of see how I'm creating the guides here. Okay, and it's up to you to decide what kind of a layout you'd like to do. I'm really popular this morning. Sorry for all of my emails. Let me go ahead and mute that so you don't have to hear that. I think these gutters are too big, so I'm going to go down to about 1/4 inch or 0.25. And this is usually a good framework for me to work in. I still think that these are good, you know, thumbnail sizes, image sizes, but play around with it. You can create new guides for every single page if you'd like. But again, for your document to really look symmetrical and consistent, I always think it's really important to use guides. And again, you don't have to use every single square. Like the example I gave here, you know, I've made like this 4x3 grid. And you can see that I didn't use every square, but it at least helped me lay it out so that all of my gutters are consistent. These I just placed the frames, this I just bisected the page. So you can do different guides on every page if you'd like, but I would say if you create different guides, go ahead and keep the gutter space the same to help it look consistent throughout your work. Okay, so we've got some guides here, and now what I'd like to do is go over frames and how frames work because they really are everything in InDesign. Okay, so what is a frame? A frame is essentially a container. I'm hopping back over here. These are the containers, and you can see that if you are in preview mode, work mode, they are blue with an X in them if there's no content in it. And frames can hold images, a color, so this is just holding a color, or text. This is also a text frame. So frame with text in it, frame with text in it, frame with color, and frame with an image. But they all come from the same place. I'm going to say it again, a frame. So in our portfolio that we're making together, to insert a frame, the easiest way to start is hit F for frame. And if you look over here in your toolbar shortcuts, you can see that there's a rectangular frame tool, and your cursor changes to a target. So if I hit V, that's our selection tool, and then if I hit frame, that's my frame tool. There are two ways to create a frame, and the first way is really simple. It's a click and a drag, and then you let go. I'm going to undo that, so Control Z. So again, click, hold, I'm dragging, and then once I see the shape that I like, I let go. And I'm going to undo it again. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to come within these frames and click and drag, and Adobe is smart enough to kind of snap to. And can you see while I'm drawing, once I have a particular shape, it uses something called Smart Guides to let me know that they're equal sizes. So this is saying that the heights and the width are the same, and then you'll see it again down here as well. Okay, so as soon as you see those Smart Guides, you can let go. I wish you could see me doing it. I am not doing this carefully with my mouse at all, because again, with InDesign helping me, I don't have to be very exact. I'm going to use InDesign's help to make it exact. So that was the click and drag method. The other thing that you can do, for example, let's say that you know that you have to have like a 4x4 picture. If you know the exact dimension you want, you click quickly on the screen and let go. So just a click, maybe, there we go. So just a quick click, and then you can go 4x4, and then okay. All right, so there it is. And you'll notice that, if you click again, it'll remember the previous measurements, and then you can hit OK and make another one. I'm going to undo that. But once you're done making your shapes, just like in Photoshop, when you're done, go back to your selection tool. So V, and then you can start picking these up and moving them. And the Smart Guides, do you see that right now there are pink guides on my screen? That will know when you're centered vertically and horizontally, and then you let go. So again, if I'm going to drag it off center, if I drag it to the right, as soon as you see that pink line, let go and it's centered, then pull it down. This is aligning it to the other squares, but I'm going to look for that pink line to get it centered on the screen. There we go. Okay, so again, use the Smart Guides to help you do your layouts in InDesign. So that's how you add a really basic frame tool. There are two options again. We're click and drag for the freehand, or a click, and then you can input the properties. If you want to change the properties, well, click on Properties. Let's say you thought the 4x4 was too small and you want a 5x5. Again, I'm going to keep this locked, so if I do 5 inches, it changes it to 5 inches by 5 inches. If you decide that you no longer want it square, let me try to find the middle. I'm bad at math, so I'm like, do I go up or down? There you go. So if I want it to be like 6 inches wide, first I deselected the chain, and now I'm just making it 6 inches. Okay, so you can play around with that. You can also eyeball it, but for me it's really hard to drag and make things exact, like you get weird numbers like 5.12. So I typically try to avoid that and just use the Properties menu to easily get those the size I want them to be and where I want them to be. Okay, so that's your frame tool. While we're here, let me also point out that if you hit F for frame or right click, either way, there are other options that you have. So if you click on Ellipse, you can make ovals, or if you hold the Shift key, you can make a circle. So the Shift key makes it symmetrical so that it kind of locks it in place. If you right click, you can also do a polygon. And by default, it has 6 sides. I think I may have changed this, but if you double click while you're on the polygon, you can change the number of sides. So if you're into triangles, you can do a triangle. I don't know why you would do a square because there's already a square tool. So again, if you're in Polygon, double click on it, and I'm going to make a 7-sided, oh, that's beautiful. There we go. So you can change those sizes there too. So you don't just have to work with rectangular frames. Again, there's circles, there's ovals, triangles, really, you can do many shapes here. One thing I will say, take it easy, especially for this portfolio for digital graphics that we're working on. Really just stay with the square and rectangular, maybe a couple circles here and there, but honestly, simple is better. We want this to be almost like museum quality where everything's just very simple, straightforward, almost to the point of it being archival in a sense. And even for your other work, just be careful so it doesn't end up looking like too scrapbooky. So that's how you put in a frame. In just a moment, I'm going to talk about what we can do with all these frames. So I'm going to clean up just a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is switch back to my example. And I'm going to show you again, there's an image frame, a text frame, and then we've got some color, and we can also do outlines. So those are the 3 things that we'll eventually go over. But what I'm going to do now is start with text because we will be doing lots of text and word processing with InDesign in the future as well. So let's get started with that. So I'm going to hop back to my cover. So I can scroll up, or again, I can go to my pages and double click on page 1, either way. So I would like to put some sort of cover, and there's lots of options that you have for a title page. Mine is really simple. I just justified it to the right, but you can center it, you know, lots of different options there. But again, keep it simple and pretty legible. So I'm going to hit F for frame. And what I'm going to do is I want mine to go across the bottom, so I'm just freehanding a big frame. I won't necessarily use all of this space. And you can choose to do it at the top, or you can move it around after the fact. It's up to you. So right now I just have an empty frame, but to make it a text frame, I'm going to hit T for text, so you can see it switch to text. And then as soon as I click inside, I will see kind of that pulsing cursor, and I can start typing. Right? Not very groundbreaking. So again, F for frame, T for text to click inside, and everything you need is in the properties bar. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on like the character or the size because I am assuming that all of you guys have done something similar in Microsoft Word or Pages, Sheets, things like that. A thing to remember is that for any edits to take place, you need to highlight the text first. So if I wanted to change the font, I can come over here and grab, you know, my font of choice. And it should be pretty simple, you know, easy to read. Don't go too scripty, don't go too cute. And then there are some other parameters that you can also play with that we'll talk about later. But just basic text, you know, again, if you highlight it, you can change the paragraph style by right, center. Full justify will be really awkward here, right? But some of the things that I like to play with are tracking. What tracking does is it actually changes the space between the letters. So you can see that they're all starting to spread out a little bit. I think tracking works really, really well. So that would just be for like a simple label. So again, if I just put, once you highlight it, what we need to do is, let's see, it's hidden in here somewhere. Do you see these 3 little dots? These will be imperative because we've got stuff hidden in here. But if you click these three dots under the character menu, character three dots, you will see all caps. And what that allows you to do is change something to be all caps without having to retype it. And if you don't like it, you can turn it off and it goes back to normal. So I use this all the time. And then I think we're calling this Digital Graphics Portfolio. And again, if I highlight it, I can make that lower caps, or I can keep it upper caps and then maybe make it smaller, right? So play around with that. Now, if you'll notice, as I am typing, or as I'm putting in text, do you see that everything is anchored to the top? You can change where your text anchors from. So for example, here, oh, it is also to the top. Shame on you, Naima. You faked it, and now everybody knows. So this is something that you should use all the time. I'm going to scroll down quite a bit, but you will see a text frame option in here. Okay, so again, to get here, this is going to be really subtle. I am not double-clicked inside, right? See how that option goes away? So hit escape so that your frame is selected, and you'll know your frame is selected because you see all these like little square toggle points. Okay, subtle difference. But once you're here, go ahead and click Options on Text Frame, and let's turn on Preview. And what we can do is we can align it, our content, to the center. So this is under Verticals Justification, or we can align it to the bottom, right? Or we can justify it, which means it's going to fill up the whole thing, right? So depending on the situation, you may at some point use all of those. I use bottom quite a bit as well as center. I mean, I really use these all the time. I'm going to sound like an old lady for a minute and complain. They used to have a beautiful set of buttons to go over the vertical justification, but when they moved everything into the property menu, it got stuck under options. That's okay, I'll take it. There's a lot of things that they made more convenient, so it's a trade, I guess. Right, so I have that aligned to the bottom, and you can always come when you're in the V menu and kind of adjust this up and down as you need to. Okay, so it's a really, really simple text frame. There's so much more that's involved with text that I will also go over, but that was really just kind of like the basics, where to start. And what we'll do is, since we did this one right here, I'm going to go into the other pages to give you more examples of text, but I'm going to do this on a slightly blank page. Not slightly. What do I mean by slightly blank? I'm skipping this page because I've already created guides, and I really just want a blank template to show you how to put in text. So just an FYI, this portion doesn't necessarily relate to the text that you will be putting into your project. I don't expect like pages and pages of text, but it's a good overview of text for you to use in the future. So what I'd like to do is go over how to put in like bullets, and also how to put in text over multiple pages, because that's really different. So just a quick review. To add a text box, we're going to start with F for frame, click and drag, right? And then to turn it into a text box, I have to hit T. So you can see my cursor is going to change from a target to a cursor, a text cursor. And when I click in here, it's waiting for me to type, right? We see that flashing cursor. So if you would ever like to add bullets, like for example, on my portfolio example, I put some bullets to show the skills for the project. So if you're showing your work and you want to list like this involved masking, hue saturation transformations, vanishing points, you can write those skills down. Or really, if you ever need any sort of a bullet, you can go up to properties, and you will see that there is a section for bullets and numbering. So if I just click here and start typing, so it doesn't look like it's added it yet, but if I start typing 1, 2, 3, it starts putting in that text for me. Now you can also change that to a number, right? If you want to change all of them, highlight all of them and then click on the number. Or you can change it back to the bullets and numbering. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Let's talk about customization. So I'm going to do two kind of weird things here. I'm throwing lots of stuff at you. So this is like the default text, but let's say that we want to use the same text that we used on our cover. And I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong terminology, not the same text, the same font. What you can do is use something called the eyedropper tool right here. And the eyedropper tool will allow you to copy formats. So in this case, it's going to copy this font right here, but it might get rid of our bullets because this font doesn't have bullets. But that's okay. It'll stop me, or it'll help me by at least getting the same font and the same font size. So I'm going to click on my eyedropper. So everything's selected here. I use my eyedropper. Okay, I click there, and it copied it. So this is funny. Well, I think it's funny. I have a weird sense of humor. So yes, it grabbed the font, but it also justified it. So it grabbed all of the properties. So if I want to kind of go back a little bit, I can left justify it and turn on the bullets. So it's up to you. What is, not necessarily what's more convenient, but is it easier for you just to highlight the text and change the font and the size? Or is it easier for you to match the font or eyedrop the font and then fix the other settings? You know, in this case, it was probably 6s. I ended up doing as much work, but just in a different way. So now we've got our list that matches the other one. I'm going to make this one a lowercase font. Okay, so I turned off the caps. And let's talk a little bit more about customization. So under bullets, there's this options tab right here. If I click on options, you can see that I have some different options for my bullets. I have a smaller bullet, I have like an asterisk, I can't say that right now, I just got retainers, but you can add a different character. So sorry, let me click on a blank space. Oh, nope, that doesn't matter. So if I click on add, you can see that it's looking at the Neutra text or the text that I'm in, and you can see all of the different characters that are available. It's not very helpful if you're looking for something like a checkbox. Okay, so one little hack or one little thing that I like to do is just about every computer has a font family called Wingdings. It's pretty standard. Whoops, let me go back. So if I look at Wingdings, okay, I just have to click off of there. That took me. So type in Wingdings, it should pull up. If you don't have it, it's a free online download. You can find it just about anywhere. You can do like smiley faces. I don't know why you would do that, but why not, right? I think we all need a little bit more smiles. You can do these square bullets. I'm going to add that one too. You can do like a checkbox bullet, right? And then when I click on OK, you can see that it added those. Since preview's on, here's what the smile looks like. Here's the little bullet. Here's the big bullet right there. So a lot of people, as they're working on their portfolios, have often asked, 1, how do I add bullets? And 2, how do I customize them? So that was a quick overview on bullets and bullet customization. I think it should be pretty straightforward. Okay. That covers bullets. The next thing that I want to go over is something that I definitely want to try and follow along with you. So if you've just been watching for this next part, which is text across multiple pages, let's definitely do this part together. So I'm going to add 2 more pages. So we get 2 blank layouts, and we're going to work side by side again. Let's do this. Since we already have a text box that has the right font, let's duplicate it. So there's 2 ways of duplicating. Control C, Control V, right? Or just like Photoshop, if we hit Alt and drag, we can copy it as well. I wish Alt worked in every program, but it does not. And I can actually just drag it all the way here. So again, to copy, Control or Command C, and Command V or Control C. And Alt. Alt is my favorite because the thing that's so nice is once you get comfortable with one Adobe program, they're starting to make it so that they're merging all of their shortcuts. You don't have to learn a whole bunch of shortcuts. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, since I'm in V, I'm going to make this text box big, like the size of the page. I'm going to click inside and I'm just going to delete everything. Okay, we're going to start with a blank or an empty text box. And then once you're there, we are going to go to, let me find out where this is. Here we go. Yep. So under type, so across the top of your menu, find type and go to fill with placeholder text. So this is not going to like mean anything to you. It's just kind of random gibberish, right? And I still have my bullets on, so I need to turn off my bullets. We don't want bullets here. And actually, let me do this because it just turned it off on the one. You have to hit Command or Control A. That selects everything. That's a select all. And then go ahead. You might have to turn on your bullets and then turn them back off. Okay. I did not want bullets in there. If you started a blank text box without copying yours down, you might be just fine. So I'm gonna, you can see that I have my spell check on. You probably don't. So let me turn mine off so that our screens look the same, and then in the future you'll know where to turn yours on. So spell check, this might take me a minute to find, bear with me. Okay, good. So edit, spelling, and it's called dynamic spelling. Absolutely, absolutely turn this on, but for now, let's turn it off just because my screen looks crazy. And there will be two things to consider when we do our text across multiple pages, or just anyway. Sorry, I get excited. So here you can see that some of these words, even though they make no sense, skip down to the next sentence. And what I need you to do is come over to your properties menu, and under paragraph you can see where it says hyphenate, there's a checkbox. Uncheck that, and now you can see that it only allows whole words to go to the end of the sentence. So again, even though these words don't make sense to you, you can see that nothing is hyphenated now because we turned off hyphenate. Another thing that you can do that I think makes your work look a lot cleaner and streamlined is right now everything is right justified, but I really like using justify with last line aligned left, right? So if it's a full justify, this one actually works out nicely because everything goes to the end, but sometimes it looks awkward. But a justify with an aligned left also looks really nice. I don't know if it's OCD or what, but I love the way this looks versus this. I don't know. That's definitely like the architect designer in me. I just like these nice, straight, clean lines. So I think that's another hint to make things look professional. Two hints. One, turn off hyphenation. And two, try to make your text justified. I think it reads a lot better. So after you've done that, now what I'd like to do is show you how to add text across two pages. Because let's say that you wanted to kind of keep typing. So what I'm going to do, just for example, I'm going to copy this text and I'm going to paste it, right? So where did all of that text go that I just copied? This is something that's so subtle and you won't notice it because you've been looking at InDesign for less than an hour, less than a day. Even if this is a review, if you've been using it for weeks, this might be subtle. But there is a red checkbox, or sorry, a red plus sign right here. And that means that there's more text to add. So from this red plus sign, we have two options. And before I go over any of those, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw another random frame right here. And I'm going to turn on work mode again so you can see that there is a frame here. So option number one is to click on that red plus sign, and then essentially place that text, right? So let me do that one more time. I'm going to hit escape to get rid of it. So click on the plus, click to place it. That's what I want you to try, okay? If you weren't comfortable with the copying and pasting, one thing you can do to kind of cheat, make your text frame smaller so that you still know that you have a whole bunch of text in here that you hid. It doesn't get deleted, it just kind of moves down, okay? You can paste it in that way. Now what I was trying to show you is, again, it'll automatically make a text box for you, or if you already have a frame, you can take it and place it into that frame. Now see how it all doesn't fit? I can hit the plus sign and add some here. And then if I shrink this down, I can add the plus sign and add even more in here. So lots of options. So it isn't getting deleted, it's just kind of being repurposed. So when you look at a magazine or a textbook, next time you're looking at a magazine or a textbook, just know that this is what publishers do to fit their text. This is the program that they use. So it's pretty cool that we are using, professional industry tools. And here's the thing that's really cool. Again, I'm a nerd, so I don't know if you'll think it's very cool. But let's say we delete this text box right here. All of this content doesn't get deleted. Look, it moved down. So let me show you again. It says Volopus. This is like some Harry Potter stuff over here. When I delete it, again, it doesn't actually delete the content. It just skips down to the next one, right? So you can delete these, and as long as there's one frame that still exists, it all gets kind of sent back. If you delete the original one, then it's gone, right? So you have to have at least one text frame, but it will keep kind of passing it down as long as there's a text frame to go into. So that is how you add text across different pages. And again, you can do that by creating the frames in advance. You can have InDesign automatically create those frames and you can edit them down. The main thing to remember is that when you hit that red plus sign, it really does connect all of those different frames so that they're still in order, and it allows your setup to be really, really flexible. Okay. Now let's get into the fun stuff, and that is the graphics. So for the graphics, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my original layouts, which was pages 2 and 3, and we're going to do this a couple different ways. So because I already have a grid set up on here, I am going to copy the grid, or I'm going to copy these spreads. I'll show you how to do that, and we're going to bring images in several different ways. The first time will be just with a JPEG, and we're going to do JPEGs 2 different ways, and then we're just going to show you how to pull in PDFs and PSDs as well. So go ahead and get ready for images, and please make sure that you have some sort of a grid set up. Again, I have a 3 by 4 with a 1/4 inch gutter between them. All right, so images are also based on frames. And I want to be clear, images will be any sort of content that you bring in. So it could be JPEGs, PDFs, PSDs. There's so many options you have to bring in. I will also be talking about graphics. Now, graphics and images may sound like the same thing, but there is a distinction between them. Graphics includes things that are just like color, accents, like things like lines or outlines, things like that. So images and graphics will be 2 separate things that we talk about, and right now it will be images. Before we jump into how to insert images within our frames, I'm going to review how to duplicate your spreads. So your frames, you already know how to copy or duplicate. We can do an Alt and a drag, or a Control C and a Control V. But what if you want to copy an entire spread layout, which is what I'd like to do now. So I've got pages 2 and 3, and what I want to do is double click on those numbers so it selects both of them. And there's two ways of duplicating it, and this is really similar to what we do in Photoshop. So if I take pages 2 and 3 and drag down to the new page icon, it duplicates them and it puts them at the bottom. If you do it this way, there's still another step. Now you have to drag them back up where they used to be. Whoops, I did that wrong. So it takes a minute. I need to drag them up right here. Okay, might take a couple tries to get that right. Or if you don't want to do the drag, you can always right click and I can move these pages. So I want to move pages 8 and 9, which are these two. And I want to move them after page 3, which is this page right here. And it moves them. Okay, so you might need to set that up, but you can move them that way too. Now, another way that you can duplicate them, I'm going to go, actually, I won't delete these. I'm going to just add another one. So let's say I didn't do it that way, but I double click on pages 2 and 3. I right click. I'm going to go to duplicate spread again, and that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, we'll just ignore that for now. Sorry. So now that we've got 2, 3, okay, so now that we've got 3, now that we've got our 2 spreads here, I'm going to show you how to pull in an image, several different image types. But for the first round, I'm going to show you the 2 different ways that you can pull them in using the same image. So on our first spread, let's go ahead and delete these extra boxes. So you don't want to click on them one by one because that takes a minute, but you can actually take your cursor, click and drag, and it grabs everything. Now, let's say that you want to get everything except for one thing. You can hold your Shift key, and that allows you to select multiple objects. So if you wanted to keep this one, you could. So again, click and drag, right? I'm going to hit Escape to deselect, or just click off of it. And then Shift click so you can individually select. So either way, go ahead and get rid of everything that's on this side. And now we're going to talk about pulling in images into a frame. So that's the first way. So if you already have a frame, what you can do is click on it, and the shortcut to pull in an image is called placing it. But the shortcut for place is Control D. I don't know where they got that, or Command D if you're on a Mac. Just think of it as duh. Like, oh, of course I want to bring in an image. Duh. So Command D, and we're going to start with this Villa Savoy right here. And go ahead and, I want you to see my screen. So Emma Villa Savoy, open. And this is how it comes in. Now, if you'll notice, let me do that one more time. If you have a preview, and if you don't, it's okay, but you can see that this is a pretty big image. We see this is so fun and a dinosaur. I'm going to hit cancel. But here we don't see the whole image. And the reason why that is we have a frame that is, let's look at the properties. Our frame is a 6x5. And what Photoshop is doing is it recognizes that this image is bigger than the 6x5. So it's essentially only showing us the portion of the image that fits within the 6x5. Now, there's a couple things that we can do to kind of get around that. But before we do that, let's also see the one other way, and then we'll kind of back up from there. So this is the first way. The second way, we're going to do it on this left side. Remember, on this left side, we don't have a frame. So if we hit Command D, or duh, of course we want an image, enter. Now there's a little thumbnail on our cursor, and InDesign is waiting for us to show it where we want this image. So go ahead and click anywhere on your screen. So this is what the actual full-size image looks like. Okay, so if we bring it in without a frame, it brings in the full size versus what it looks like in a frame. Now, most of our images are these high quality, larger images. So this is why I say to always work within a frame, just because you won't have to scale your images down as much. It's less work for you to kind of have the frames already in place. Okay, so quick recap, that's the difference between the two. If you have a frame, you have kind of like a nice limit to how big the image can get on your screen. If you just do a Control D to place it, even something as simple as like an iPhone image is ridiculously huge. Like they get so, I think iPhone images are something like 42 inches by 30 if you have a newer one. So it will totally go off your screen. So I would suggest always working with frames. I'm going to delete this just by clicking on it and hitting the delete key. Okay, that gets rid of that. And now we're going to go back and just play within the frame. So in a frame, there's two things that are going on. And let me hit W so you can see this a little bit better. But when you click on it first, it might look a little pixelated. So you're not crazy. Yes, it is pixelated. It's also pixelated on my screen. So what I'd like you to do, let's actually click off for a moment and go to right click, display performance, and just hang out here for a minute. So usually your display performance will either be under typical or fast. Now this is something, so this is fast, which totally gets rid of my images, but a typical display is a little pixelated. And the reason why that is InDesign is so graphic heavy, like on your graphics card and on your computer, that to save a little bit of memory, what it does is it shows the image not at high quality so that the program can work a little bit faster, your computer runs a little bit smoother, because computers are just in like the last, even like decade, 5 years, are starting to get to the point where they can handle such big documents. Because remember, today, for this assignment, we'll only have like, a few pages. But as your portfolio gets bigger and bigger, that's a lot of content for it to process quickly. So the display performance is always typical, so it's not the best. But if you go to high quality, let me try it here. So this one says view setting. It should start to look a little bit better. Now there's definitely still some pixelation here, but try it on your own work. If you want to see a better preview, change it to high quality. If you find that your computer starts to lag, just change it to typical to help out with that. So after you've set your view settings, what we can do now is work within the frame. So the blue line indicates the frame. This is our limit. But if we use this little circle, if we click there, some people have a hand, some people don't. I love the little high five. I remember last semester a few people didn't. It might be a PC versus Mac thing, I don't know. But you can see that there's kind of this brown frame now, and this shows you the size of the image. So if you look at our properties, when we have our image selected, it's a 14 by 10. Okay, if I click off of there, just by clicking anywhere off of it and click on my frame is only a 6 by 5. So now we have to make a decision. How do we want this to look in our frame? Do we need to make the frame bigger to make everything fit, or do we need to shrink our image down? And you have all of these options. If you look here, we've got something called the frame fitting panel. And one thing that I always tell people to do is to make sure that you always use the options that are proportionally. See these two? There's a couple that aren't, and I don't even know why they're there. They drive me crazy because it makes everything look squatty. So let's go through each one of these, and we're going to do Control Z or undo each one so that we can kind of see it reset. So under Fill Frame Proportionately, what it does is it fills the frame. Let me hit W. Actually, I don't need to hit W. So it shrinks it down so that the frame is filled, but the image isn't necessarily filled. So in this case, it works, but the poor little dinosaur is being cut off, so that might not work. And also, if you are working with like a floor plan, you might not want your floor plan to be cropped. So I'm going to hit Control Z, and now we're going to do the next one, which is fit content proportionately. And what that does is it shrinks it down so that the whole, like all of the content fits within the frame. But can you see that when we did that, now our frame is too big? You never want stuff hanging off the side. That's just kind of like bad like housekeeping or bad manners in InDesign. You don't want any edges hanging off. So what you can do in that case is once you get it fitted correctly, I'm going to skip over a little bit. You can now, I am looking for fit frame to content. Here we go. So fit the frame to the content. So what it's going to do is it's going to zip these up. Okay. So I'm going to undo that. See how it just fits it right there to the content. Okay. Now if I undo that one more time, this is why I don't like using fit content to frame, because it doesn't do it proportionately. So can you see how I have these extra overhangs? If I click on that, it stretches everything out. This one's a little bit subtle, but I can always notice when the Villa Savoy looks stretched out. I wish Adobe, if you're listening, your InDesign team needs to get rid of this. This is no good. I don't like this button. So make sure that you always use these proportionate buttons. And then after you've used them, please make sure that you fit the frame to the content. Okay? Now let me play with this just a little bit more. So if I take this and just kind of freehand it like that, right? I can go back and do the fill frame proportionately. So remember how these are hanging off? You can also go back and click on the fit frame to content, and it'll make the frame bigger. So before it, shrunk in the frame, but it can also make the frame bigger too, if that's what you're looking to do. So those buttons are really helpful when it comes to getting the image to fit. Now let's talk a little bit more about the image in here. So when I click on my frame, again, let me just go ahead and center this. I like being centered. So let's reset a little bit. I'm going to make this the 6x4 again, or I think it was 6x5, whatever it was. Let's make it 6x5 just so we match, and then let's center it. There it is. Okay, I'm just waiting for those guides. And since we're all using the same image, eventually we'll get to the same place. So when you click on your image, if you look at properties, it lets us know that our image is only 64% of the original size. You never want to go over 100%. And the reason why this is important is because what I'd like to do next is I'd like to give an example of wanting to center in or zoom in on one particular item. So let's say that I just want to focus in on the Villa Savoy. So I'm going to take this up to 100% and then use this to kind of recenter my image. And this is great because I'm still at 100. Now again, in this situation, it's the Villa Savoy, but think about your other work. What if you did a Revit project that you love, but you don't necessarily want to have like the title block and everything else on it? You can use your frame as well as the scale to kind of change things around if you need to. Okay, just make sure you don't go over 100. And then down here, if I want to crop off the dinosaur tail, I can use these toggle points, right? Look for these arrows just like you do in the transformation in Photoshop and kind of lift that up just like that. Okay? If you don't like that this got to an odd number, maybe make it a 3x4, right? And then you can again adjust this so that, the dinosaur tail doesn't come back in, but, work with all of these things. So you don't always have to show the entire image. It's really flexible as to like what you can show and how. But again, I think it's a really powerful tool to, one, have an image frame, and then use that image frame to control what you're seeing from that specific image that you put inside of the frame. Okay, let's show you some even cooler stuff here. So this is where we can start fusing Photoshop and InDesign together. So what I'm going to do now is actually take it back down to like 50% so that we can see this a little bit better. Okay, and what we're going to do now is, while we're here, when we pull in a Photoshop file, we can still continue working on it, and we can work on it in Photoshop and it'll directly update here, or we can also edit what layers we see here as well. So that's what we're going to do next. So up here, it says this is so fun. And I hope that there are some font snobs out there like me, but this is the Papyrus font. And it's, I'm so sorry to say this, but it's kind of like this thing where I think in the design world, when people see it, they cringe because it's so overused. But, you know, never say never. Things come back around. So you guys might be the generation to ironically use Papyrus, but actually make it cool again, similar to the creepy mustache. So what you can do here, the first thing you can do is right click. And this is only if it's a PSD. I should put that out there. If you go down to Object Layer Options, it pulls up a really simple menu, and turn on preview for me, where you can actually turn things on and off. Not things, you can turn layers on and off so that you can control what you see. And the thing that's awesome about this is that you can control it separately from other images inside the same file. So for example, I'm going to click OK. I love you, dinosaur. I love you, other stuff, but we're going to turn you off for now. If I copy this over to the left, I'm holding the Shift key to keep it straight, so I'm holding Alt and Shift right now. Now, if I come over here and go to Object Layer Options, I can turn these two things back on to kind of see the difference between the left and the right side. So it's kind of, it's very nice and it's very powerful. I keep saying fun, but to me this is fun, and I hope one day it is fun for you too. So that's one version of layer control that you can have. And then I'm going to show you one other thing that you can do as well. So let's say that, you know, this image just doesn't look right yet, or it's missing something. You can actually right click and you can go to Edit Original. And if your computer is smart, which it should be, it should automatically open up Photoshop. Now I might have an awkward pause here because my Photoshop might not be set to my screen size where I'm recording. So I might pause for just a minute so that Photoshop fits so you can see what I can do. But hopefully you saw that it did open up Photoshop. Maybe I don't need to pause. You guys can see some behind the scenes shrinking down of my screen. Let me go ahead and pull it in here. Yeah, I think that does it. Okay, so now I'm in Photoshop, right? Wow, so amazing, Naima. I'm going to create a new layer, and using the brush tool, sorry, not gradient, the brush tool, let me change the color to like a red. It doesn't matter what color red. I'm going to draw like a giant heart. Oh, that's no good. What brush do I have? Let's go general brushes, heart round. That should do it. There we go. There we go. And then as soon as I hit Command S to save it, okay, so I'm going to save that first. Now, if you do Command or Control Tab, it goes between your programs. InDesign is immediately like, hey, the file Emma Villa Savoy has different layers than the imported version. The link will be updated with the source file's current layer and visibility settings. I don't know why I think that Adobe talks like a mean girl, but we're going to go with it. So when I click OK, now it just reset everything because it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. We have new layers. You have to pick which ones you want. But again, this is a powerful tool because the way that InDesign works is something that you haven't worked with before in Microsoft Word, is that each one of these files, so if I copy it over, a few more times, every time I make a change in one, it'll update all of them. So let me go back to Photoshop, right? This time I'm not even doing Edit Original. I'm gonna just come in here and let me add the arrow. Okay. And then again, I have to hit save so that it knows that, I made changes. Well, that was anticlimactic. Did you not save? No, it saved. Okay, let me go here. Well, it's not saving, but if I go to my properties, it will eventually get mad at me because it should know that this isn't the updated image. So, properties, I need to look at links for a minute or just wait for my computer to catch up with me. This is really awkward. Hold on, I'm going to pause and see where I can quickly get it. Let me just try save one more time. Let me also add another layer. Okay, so it did it once and now it's just kind of ignoring me. But one thing that's odd, okay, so I even run into stuff like technology hiccups, obviously. But typically, if something has updated in InDesign and it's not updated here, we will get a cute little caution sign like warning, this is not working, this is an old version. Let me save this real quick. I'm going to call this one test. And I am actually going to completely close out of this. The reason why I'm still recording, I'm sure you guys are like, why is she still recording? This obviously isn't working. I want you to see that, even the professional that's teaching you stuff, I also run into things that aren't working as they should. So this is not working as it should. So, and the reason why I know that is because I've added an arrow and it hasn't updated. There is a window called links. And I'm going to open that real quick because that should at least show us the caution sign. There we go. So I don't know if this is a 2020 thing. Remember earlier I got so excited that something new was working so well. But if you can see here on the links, here's that caution sign that I was looking for. Usually it's right here on the image, so you know immediately that, oh man, I need to update. So let me back up just a little bit now that I've kind of seen what's going on. But again, I went to Window and I turned on Links. So that's a new menu that I have, and I'm actually just going to nest it in here. We don't need layers. But under Links, if you see that one of them is giving you a caution sign, you can see if you click on the caution, it says Modified. Double click to update. Let's double click it and see how it updated that one. I don't like that it's making us do all of them. Okay, this is why. If you go to the main one, right, if I double click on this one, it updates all of them, okay? So I will still say that InDesign is a really powerful tool. Excuse me, I've been lecturing longer than I typically do, so I'm losing my voice. But the reason why this is so powerful is imagine that this is like a logo that you put on your portfolio on every single page, like, or every single spread twice. And you decide, I want to update my logo. If this was Microsoft Word, you'd have to go through the whole document and replace it on each spread in 2 different places. But because it's in InDesign, it's a linked file, so everything that changes gets automatically updated within the file. So linked files are so important because once you have told InDesign where you're pulling the file from, so let me try to go to my Finder. So this is where Emma is. If I move this, it will be so mad. So let me create a new folder, and I'm going to write mean trick. I'm going to drop Emma in here. Let's say that that was you deleting the file or moving the file. When I go into InDesign, it might not yet, but if I try to save this, remember where there was a caution sign? Now it's saying it's missing. Double click to find it. So now the file is gone, which means that when it prints, it's going to look terrible. You can't update it because it can't find it. But if I double click on this, InDesign is basically like, hey, you have to go find it. I have no idea where it is. So what I want to do is go to InDesign Files. Here's Mean Trick. And as soon as I find one, all of them will be relinked, which is really nice. And in fact, here's something else that's really cool. Again, I say things are cool, things are fun. That might not actually be fun. Actually, no, I'm going to leave that. Let me just tell you because I don't have more than one image. But let's say that you move all of your files into a different folder. As soon as you find one of them, InDesign will look for the others that are missing and automatically update them. It's really nice. That's a feature that they added a couple years ago to save us more work. So we have already gone over a ton. So this was kind of like the overview of how to pull in images, how to work with PSDs. We're not done yet though. We're going to stay with images for just a bit longer. I'm going to also show you how to pull in PDFs, and I'm going to show you one other way of also pulling in your images so you can link your layers right from the beginning. So I'm going to go down to my next spread and I'm going to pull in Emma's file in one more time. So if I do Command D, here is Mean Trick, here's Emma. Here's the new thing that we're doing. We're going to click on Show Import Options. So look somewhere on your screen. Again, if you are on a different kind of file or different system, it'll look different, but just make sure Show Import Options are on. And then when we click Open, here's that same menu. Before we even put it in, I can turn off these layers. I can turn off This Is So Fun. It shows me everything here, and then click OK. And it pulls in just how I want. Now this is where you can see that it's really, really pixelated. So if that freaks you out, display performance, high quality, phew, it looks a lot better, okay? Watch out for that. Now the reason why I wanted to show you guys show import options is that helps with PDFs. So what I'm about to do is pull in, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. Just to let you guys know, I add in Photoshop on my downloads at least like 100 to 200 files a week, so I'm constantly dumping things after an assignment. Oh, here's some fun cards I made. So Old Bay seasoning, Old Man seasoning, some more. I do a lot of marketing. I photoshopped a garage door onto my house. It's my little junker, but I love it. So garage door. Oh, I want to put graffiti on my garage door, but my husband said no. I'm still working on that one. This is what it looks like. This is what I want. This is probably what we'll end up with. I digress. Okay. What I wanted to show you was how to pull in a PDF. Again, if you have taken any sort of like AutoCAD, Revit, anything like that, you might have some plan sets that you want to pull in to your portfolio. And it might not be the first page. So by default, InDesign will always bring in the first page. And these title blocks are not anything that are like beautiful that you want to include, because remember, this is meant to be like a 30 by 42 and you're shrinking it down to an 8.5 by 11. So let's focus on the good stuff. And let's say that in this case, the good stuff is on page 4 of your PDF, and this is what we want to show. So I'm going to show you how to do that in InDesign. So again, page 4, this elevation right here. So again, I'm using Control or Command Tab to come back into InDesign. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to come over here and grab one of these frames. I'll make it a little bit bigger because it is a floor plan. Because if I brought in, let me show you what happens. If I just hit Control D, and pulled in the PDF. It is huge. This is why we always want a frame. I'll be your guinea pig. It's big. It essentially covers up 1, 2, and a little bit of a third page. So we like frames. Moving on, I click in my frame. How do we pull in an image? Duh, Command D. It really stands for place. We click on Plan Set, and remember this will only work if we have Show Import Options on, because by default it's always going to be the first page. And then when you click on Open, now what you can do, you have this teeny tiny thumbnail. If you've met me in person, you know that I'm kind of blind. Everything is blurry to me, so this is just ridiculous. I know that I want page 4. So I'm skipping through. That's that tiny little thing that we want. Has anybody seen Zoolander? What is this? A plan for ants? It's so small. If you don't know what that means, look it up. Go onto YouTube and look up Zoolander. What is this for ants? And I hope you smile. So we've got this. And then I'm not going to turn on transparent background because this will allow the background to be white. If you put in transparent, you have things on top of each other, then it'll look like your floor plan is like bleeding. You might want that, but it'll show or bleed through whatever's underneath it. So I click on OK, and here it is. It's huge. But again, I can use that little hand to find where I want to go. And even from here, it is so big that look, these brown lines that like help us find where we're going are way out here. So I can do like, I'm holding Shift down. This is one thing that drives me crazy. So in Photoshop, it will automatically resize proportionately for you. It doesn't do that in InDesign, unfortunately. So if you resize stuff, please make sure that these two numbers under Properties stay the same. I'm just going to help myself out by going down to 50%. And then again, you can decide how big you want it. Holding the Shift key again makes it proportional. So my InDesign people, Adobe, if you're spying on me because I've tagged you on YouTube or whatever, tell your engineering team we've got to make our scaling proportional to make it easy for us. And there you go. Okay. And even here, if it looks bad, first thing, just zoom in, okay, and check your display performance. If you're at typical, I mean, that really looks bad. But if you go to display performance high, so much better. Really, really big difference. So there's so many things that I have been throwing at you. Now, that covers images. That's what I wanted to show you for images. We've still got a couple things left to cover, so I also want to go over how to do graphics. And then last but not least, how do you save? How do you share? So we're almost there. Hang in there. Take a little break if you haven't taken one yet. And let's talk about graphics and exporting and saving quickly. Let me do a quick review. Remember that these are images, but what I'm about to start talking about is graphics. And graphics are things that kind of aren't images, so they can be like boxes of color, lines, shapes, things like that. With graphics, I will say use them sparingly, if at all, only because I don't want your work to look cheesy, but you should know how to use them. Again, we're making professional work, we're not making scrapbooks. But with that said, let me show you guys how you can add some color. It has become really popular for people to add colored backgrounds with their portfolios. Now with this said, if you're going on to another institution, it's most likely going to be required to be white. But let's say you want a black background. We're going to use a frame, and we're just going to fill this whole page with this frame right here. Okay, and what we can do with this frame, so I hit V. I did that really quickly. I don't even think about it anymore. So I went from F to V, so I can grab this. If we go to Properties, we have two different kinds of colors to choose from. And we also have these two colors here. Now, they are both red. like a red slash, and that means there's no color. So this is transparency in InDesign. In Photoshop, transparency was the gray and white checker, but in InDesign, it's this red slash. If you double click here, or I'm going to hit cancel, if you double click here, it does the same thing essentially. But can you see that when I double click on this one, I don't get as many options to begin with, but you can cycle through and get more. So if I want black, I can just click on black, and now I have a black frame. Pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to do another frame over here. I'm just going to freehand one, and I'm going to talk more about how to do something called a stroke or an outline, as well as maybe a fill color. So on the fill, I'm going to make this one of my favorite colors, cyan. But remember, you can go to any one of these palettes and pull in different colors. So if I go to none, I'll see all of the colors again, but since I was in cyan, it just gave me the cyan variants. So there's my fill color. Right underneath it, I have something called a stroke. Now with the stroke, I am going to make this, I think black should be easy to see, okay? So here's a black stroke, and I'm gonna hit escape, so let me hit V to go back to the selection tool, and I'm gonna hit W so you really see what this looks like. So this is what a 1-point black stroke looks around a frame. Let's talk about this a little bit more. You can make it thicker by increasing that point. And as I'm doing this, can you see if I go back down to 1 point, let me cheat now, it's actually making the frame bigger. Now sometimes you don't want the frame to get bigger. So if I take it back up to like even 10 point, if you click on where it says stroke, you get more options. So for example, you can change the weight here. The cap we can't see in this instance, so I'm going to ignore that for now. But under what I'm really looking for is the align stroke. So I can actually move this to the inside so that if it goes back to 1, you can see that it doesn't change the size. Okay, now I'm going to take it up to 10. Didn't change the size. Or I can bump it to the outside. Okay, so it just made it 10 points bigger. I almost always do it to the inside, but one of the drawbacks of doing it to the inside is it might start covering up your image. Like if this gets big enough, you might be covering up some content you don't want, so you might want to go to the outside. Basically, I don't use the default, which is center stroke, because I just think it makes odd sizes. So pick which one you want, it's up to you. But there are also different types of strokes. So we do, this is the thin thick, there's dots, dashes, play with those. And again, they look different depending on the thickness or the weight of your stroke. Now one other thing while we're here, if you use any of these that aren't just like a solid, you can also change the gap color. So if you want it to look like it's part of the frame, you just match the color. You could do a different color. Again, this is we're getting into scrapbooking here, but we're teaching a technique. We're teaching a skill, not a technique here, right? So that's totally up to you to kind of play with these. And this works on any kind of frame type. So I'm going to keep it here, just a little bit crazy for now. Another thing you can do is on a square, you can change the type of corner that you have. So do you see this little yellow square? If you click on it, you can edit a corner. So you can see that that activated my corners. If I click and drag, it rounds the corners, right? So now I've got a rounded corner. The other thing you can do is if you hold, I think it's Alt-click, yep, it changes the corner type. Now we're getting really cheesy here, so watch out, but there could be, you know, a use for this in the future. Maybe not this one, it's so busy. If you guys can't tell, I'm kind of a minimalist. I just think simple is better, but there you go, there's some rounded corners. So there's a couple more techniques for you. Okay, so the next thing that I want to show you is how to draw a line. The shortcut for a line is the slash key. So it looks just like a target, like when you're first drawing your frame. Or you can just click on the line, either way, but I like the slash key. And you just click and drag. And by default, this is so silly, it gives you 0 point. So bump that up to at least, 1 or 2 so you can actually see it. And it kept it cyan, which is the color that I used last, but you can change that. And then from here, what you can do is if you click on stroke, you can change the type, just like you did before. So you can do a dotted line. And you can even add endpoints. So you can do, kind of an arrow here. And then after you've drawn it, if you want to adjust it, it's kind of awkward to use a square to adjust these line points. So one thing I would do instead is I would hit A. So again, let me hit escape. So, sorry, not escape. I go back to V and it selects the whole thing. But if I hit A, it actually grabs the line, maybe. So I can grab, sorry, I'm in A. Let me click off of it and click back on. This is really subtle, but it goes from white to blue. So you want these to be white. Let me do that one more time. It's like a secret handshake, I swear. Remember we talked about Photoshop being subtle? InDesign isn't as subtle as Photoshop, but the things that are subtle are really subtle. So first I hit A. I'm in Direct Selection Tool. I'm going to click on it again. It's still blue. I need that to be white. Now it's white. Now I can grab these and kind of change them and move them around. Change the stroke to black so I can at least see what I'm doing. Okay, and you can move those around. Okay, so you have to grab those little white boxes, those grip points, which are so small. Remember when I was talking about being blind? This is it right here. And if, again, you want to edit any of those points, if you want to get rid of them, just go to the start and the end. And these are tied to your stroke weight, which I don't love. I wish that we could have our start and end be different. You can change the scales, but it doesn't, when you're working with these, it makes a little bit of a difference. So you can work with that to kind of rig it if you want. But that's really it as far as we're going to be talking about graphics. We're not going to be doing much more than that. Which brings us to kind of our last skill for this intro portion of it. The last thing that we're going to do is I'm going to teach you guys how to export all of this. So what I'd like you to do in order to kind of share your file with me, you won't be sharing InDesign files until your actual final. Until then, what you'll be doing is sending me a PDF, and usually 2 different PDFs. So let's go ahead and talk about how to export these files. All right, so you know how to save InDesign files, but how do you share them? Well, the first technique that we are going to do, that we're going to start our InDesign with, is just a simple PDF, but we're going to do our PDF in 2 ways. And what I'm going to do is export this one right here that I've been working on so you can see what the difference is. A shortcut for this is Control or Command E for the export. And you can see here that there are so many different types of file formats that you can export, but we're looking for the Adobe PDF print to start up. And you can see that it's still called Test PDF. And there's only a few things that we need to check on the next step. So I went ahead and hit OK. The first of the 3 things we need to check are the pages. Make sure it's all, okay? We also need to think about, are we exporting pages or spreads? So for now, it'll be pages, but in just a moment, we're also going to do spreads. And then the last thing I want you to check is under compression, make sure all of your images are set to maximum. Quality maximum, quality maximum. By default, that's where they should be, but maybe 2 or 3 times in the years I've been teaching this, they have been set to something different and it really affected a student. I always want people to check. So that's all I need you to do for now before you hit export. And then when you do, oh, I've got some registration. Again, I do graphic design work, so I have extra stuff here. But you can see that it exported everything for me as a PDF, and they're separate pages. But really, I would like to see these as a book layout. So now I'm going to do it a different way and also clean up my file so you don't see all those weird printer marks. So I'm going to hit Command E again. And let me slow down a little bit. So if you wanted to print this as a PDF so that you could send it to like a printer to actually print for you, this is what you would do. You would do actual pages. Now the second example I'm going to give you is how you would export it if you were sending it to somebody to just view it as a book right on their computer or phone. So we're going to go to Command E, and this time I'm going to name this as Test Spreads so you can see the difference between the two. And the only thing that you need to change is change it from export as pages, change it to spreads. Now I'm going to go and turn off all of my marks and bleeds. You guys don't need to worry about that. I do flyers for an orthodontist. Like a Swiss Army knife. I do a little bit of everything here and there. And let's see what the spreads looks like. Okay, so here is my cover page. And I'm just hitting Command minus. And in my PDF, you can see that it has exported the spreads all as one page. So again, this wouldn't be great to print out unless you're just doing a draft copy, but it is a wonderful way to send somebody your work so you can see your actual spread layout side by side versus something like this. This seems really, well, chaotic and crazy for several reasons. One, I wasn't really laying it out. I've got printer marks on, but imagine this is a beautiful portfolio where the two pages are really speaking to one another, right? It's not necessarily there. So when you turn in stuff, I most of the time just want to see your spreads so I can see how it's actually laid out. When you do your actual final project, you will be adding an additional step to it, which will be packaging your work, but we're going to get into that in just a little bit. So this covers InDesign. I still have a little blurb on another program that we'll be using to also share your PDFs. But thank you so much for sticking in with the longest lecture ever. Again, I took all of the fundamentals, threw them into one place so you can skip around for this assignment as well as future assignments. And I hope in no time you will love InDesign as much as I do. Okay, give yourselves a pat on the back. You made it! Hooray!